Can he get rid of birthright citizenship with an executive order? I'm Heather Godwin, and this is The Square Circle. Hello, and welcome to The Square Circle. I'm your host, Heather Godwin. Joining us today are Zaid Jilani of The Intercept, Michael Shindler of Young Voices, and Kayla Stetzel, also of Young Voices. Welcome, everyone. Also this week, President Trump made headlines for his comments on birthright citizenship. Here he is talking with Axios.
How ridiculous. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end.
Michael Shindler, if he is successful, what impact do you think this will have on the country?
I think that we're going to see a reduction in birther tourism. So right now, a lot of folks who want to give their kids American citizenship because it's a great thing to have, who aren't American citizens, the parents, will fly to America, stay in hotels, and have experiences specifically designed to allow these people who aren't part of our body politic to get citizenship here. And I think that if he is successful, we'll see a reduction in birther tourism, and we'll also see a reevaluation of what American citizenship means. Like the recognition that you have to apply for citizenship, that it's something that comes with the consent of the body politic, is important, and I'm glad that we're having this debate now.
Zaid Jilani, what's your opinion?
Well, I don't think he can't really do it unilaterally. I mean, I think legal experts are clear on this. This was a constitutional case that was decided. They'd have to have a constitutional amendment. With respect to the problem just mentioned of birth tourism, that does happen, particularly among upper class people from some countries. I think Russians do it quite a bit for some reason. There's a whole industry there. But you can do that by strengthening visa laws. You can do that by doing things that don't require amending the entire Constitution and don't scoop up a lot of people who aren't doing it for birth tourism, who just happen to, their parents are legal residents for several years, they're born. There's an argument to be made that birthright citizenship has been a good homogenizing force that keeps everyone within the same tier of citizens. I think we have a lot less segregation than you see over in Europe, which doesn't have the birthright citizenship. I mean, I think there are some fair arguments to be made about, perhaps this is something that should be taken a look at, but I think it'd make more sense to do that through visa laws than it would through amending the Constitution.
Kayla, what's your point of view?
Yes, I absolutely agree with what Zaid said, and I also think that this is mostly, at least I hope, somewhat of a ploy right before midterms. This speaks very well to Trump's base, but I think it's a toothless position to have. Like legally, it has very little standing. It's probably not going to go. The executive order is probably actually not going to have any effect, and even still, this comes directly from the 14th Amendment, which was originally designed to allow slaves to become citizens naturally, because there were a lot of efforts back in the late 1860s to have fresh, like newborn slaves and just slaves that have recently been emancipated moved out of the country. So the 14th Amendment protected them from that. And I think since then, it's been a very important part of the American fabric, right? So getting rid of that, though it's not likely to happen, would be, I think, very devastating for America.
I don't think that the idea that you could clarify what the 14th Amendment means by executive order is outlandish. There are some excellent articles right now up by Michael Anton, Edward J. Earler at American Greatness, which show definitively that the people who wrote the 14th Amendment did not intend to give citizenship to the children of folks who aren't fully part of our political community. What this executive order would do is clarify exactly what the administration's understanding of that amendment is, and it would give us a more cogent understanding and a better way of dealing with the process of conferring citizenship upon the newly born.
I'm a little shocked to hear about the tourism aspect of it. I guess that's not something that's been talked commonly about. Can you address that a little bit more? What percentage of there is that? To me, it's people that have come from other countries to make a better life. They raise a family here, and then their children are allowed to be citizens automatically. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's not a large percentage at all, but I think there is there's a Russian industry, I think maybe a Chinese industry now of kind of elite class people who get visas for the purpose of having kids here, so they'll get the citizenship. But again, I think, I don't think you have to redefine the Constitution to do that. I don't think the president, it probably is more of an election gambit. You can do that through checking, using visa controls and doing proper background checks and registration and everything. But it is an industry that exists. It is a problem that some people would acknowledge, but it's not. It shouldn't be exaggerated. I guess what I'm saying.
Yes, and it's also I feel like it's a very small part of the problem when shouldn't be a very high priority for the anti-immigration coalition. So for me, this whole gesture just seems very odd and well-timed, I guess I would say.
Not just odd. The problem isn't merely birthright tourism. Is that there are a lot of folks who are coming over the border and having children here. It's they're often disparaged as anchor babies. I wouldn't go so far as to use any colorful terms, but I can really say that there are people who are not part of our political body, who haven't formally asked to join. Who have children and then expect the children to have full citizenship, and right now, due to misunderstanding the 14th Amendment, they're granted a citizenship.
So you consider it a misunderstanding of the 14th Amendment?
Yes, I think that there's plenty of good reason to assume that the people who wrote the 14th Amendment understood it clearly to apply only to people who are subject to the full jurisdiction of the United States, people who are active in our political community, people who served on juries, who voted, not merely people who just happened to be here.
Well, I'm just going to push back a little bit on that. Because again, I think the text of the amendment itself, if you're a strict textualist, I feel like that actually would play in my favor. Like the text of the document reads that if you're born in the United States and underneath the jurisdiction thereof, you are a citizen. And to also, recently emancipated slaves would not have the right to be on a jury. They barely had any legal standing in courts, yet it protected them. And I believe in 1986, there was a court case that actually had to do with, I believe, immigrants coming in across the border, the Mexican border, and whether or not they had, I think, was it originally rights to schooling? And that kind of quelled some.
Which case was this?
I don't remember the title, but it was during the Reagan administration. I believe it came out of originally the 9th District, perhaps, California. And the Supreme Court did settle that in the favor of birthright citizenship, but it did flesh out some of the intention there. Right. So it'd be a difficult court case to win if it were to ever reach the Supreme Court.
So if I can address this, at the time that the 14th Amendment was being framed, it was specifically meant to bring people who were recently emancipated, who were intended to be a part of our body politic into the fold of citizenship. It wasn't intended to say, for example, bring members of Indian tribes into the fold. They were specifically excluded, and the reason that the Attorney General Trumbull gave at the time was that these are people who had allegiances to a different political community, even though they were within the geographical borders of the United States. They're part of a different political community that was recorded at the time. I'd simply say that subject to the jurisdiction includes everyone, I think, is to give a very, very weak understanding of what jurisdiction means.
Oh, interesting debate. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all this evening. And that's all for this week. I'm Heather Godwin, and thank you for watching The Square Circle. We'll see you next week.